Hello, I'm Rosemary Morgan from London Roots Research in London, and this is the final afternoon of the RootsTech conference. And here I have with me Tessa Keough from the United States and Paul Howes, and they are both he's British but also living in the United States. And they are both members of the Guild of One Name Studies, of which I am also a member. And I'm going to ask them to talk a little bit about the time that they've spent here at RootsTech and their Guild of One Name Studies. They've both got One Name Studies. Perhaps you'd like to just first of all introduce yourself and say a little bit about your own One Name Study.
Okay. My name's Tessa Keough, and you were correct, I'm from the United States. My One Name Study is my paternal surname, which is Keough, and so I started out studying it in Newfoundland and moving on to parts of the United States and Ireland.
Okay, and Paul?
Hi, I'm Paul Howes. I live in Florida. My One Name Study is at housefamilies.com. It's now 95,000 people in reconstructed family groups from people named Howes all over the world. The usual countries, plus places like Zimbabwe, Argentina, even Malaysia. And I spend a ton of time on my One Name Study. Thank goodness I'm retired.
So if there are people watching who aren't members of the Guild of One Name Studies and don't really know what it's all about, can you maybe just give a nutshell what you get out of it, or what you think other people could get out of it if they joined the Guild or had their own One Name Study? I should point out that you can join the Guild and not have your own One Name Study, which is me, but but the idea is you guys like us to have a One Name Study.
I don't know that that's even truly the idea, because about 25% of the members of the Guild don't have a One Name Study. And in fact, the first 4 years that I was a member of the Guild, I didn't register my surname. The entire reason I joined the Guild was because I was researching in Newfoundland and I wanted to know how to do it correctly, put all that information together. So I joined for the technology and the methodology, which is what I would consider as kind of advanced genealogy. And I think that's the real strength of the Guild. They have all of this expertise.
So that's a really good point then. So for people who are starting out, doing their family tree, and they've got onto the first stage and they want to take it to a more advanced level, they could join the Guild and learn more of the techniques. They don't have to have a One Name Study.
Right. I think it applies to a lot of things, because what the Guild is doing is we're studying surnames. We're studying our specific surname, but we are using advanced technology to gather the data, whether that's using indexes or records. And so you're doing things like doing, downloads, family reconstructions. You're really moving on to the more advanced level. Certainly for technology, how to do it efficiently and how to do it well.
Oh, okay.
So I think it's really helpful if you're doing any kind of project. It's very useful.
Yeah. Do you have anything to add?
That. Yeah, absolutely. I've been a Guild member since 2008 when I started my One Name Study. And in my experience, the people in the Guild are the single most collaborative group of 2,700 people that I've ever come across. Every week, for example, I go through 2 newspapers, one from New Jersey, one from Florida, and I can guarantee you there's a Guild surname in one of the obituaries in that newspaper. So I take a snap on my camera, email it to the other Guild member who's studying that name. And about every week, I get an email in return from another Guild member who's obviously studying another name, but they see a Howes in a newspaper somewhere, do the same thing. It's incredibly collaborative.
So it's a real sharing and collaborative family. I hadn't quite appreciated that.
Something else to think about is, and I really make use of this, I contact the members who are in Ireland because I have questions about Irish research. Since they're living over there and they're using those records a lot of times, even if the question isn't about surnames, it's about the research in that country. You can do that for the UK. I've had people contact me because I live in the United States and ask me questions, and they're from somewhere else. And I've contacted Australians and asked them. So
you actually contact them privately?
Right.
Not through the forum, because there's also the forum, which perhaps...
Yeah, it's a RootsWeb. The forum is a RootsWeb email list. There are over 700 Guild members who subscribe to that, and most of them will see it in their regular email every day. Some people subscribe to a RootsWeb digest system, but it's essentially the same thing. And the degree of collaboration among Guild members is astounding. One person will ask a question, and 5 or 6 other people with some degree of knowledge will write in and either with an answer or a process as to how to go about getting an answer. It's really rich.
Yeah. Okay, good. And now, when I first came across the Guild of One Name Studies was way back when we were lifting heavy books off the shelves in St. Catherine's House, and they were going through all of the surnames. Things have moved on a lot since then. We now have the internet. Do you think there's still, because back then I really quite understood why people were studying one name studies, because that was really the only way to kind of find your ancestors. But do you think it's still as relevant now as it?
I think that Paul could speak to that, but he's put together all kinds of families that all have house in common. That's not genealogy. That's connecting a larger family.
Yeah.
And a number of guild members are doing the DNA studies. So that's connecting people another way. I think it's less about data collection, just strictly collection. I don't think it's a data process. It is now about connecting families who share that surname.
It's partly
so it's moved on then.
It's partly that. I mean, so much of original sources are now available on the internet that you can use, or there are computerized indexes. I mean, compared with taking months to go through all those heavy, dusty volumes, you can now get the same result on FreeBMD in 2 minutes and download it to your computer in a usable spreadsheet. It's quite remarkable. Yeah. Now, I use the internet now as much to find new correspondents who can share their information with me and help me build my database and help me learn more about house families around the world.
Okay. And to what extent does building your big house family help you with your own family tree, which sits in the middle of that?
I had an email from a correspondent this morning who's actually questioning one of the findings in my own direct line. So I'm really curious to get back to the hotel room and look at the detail of that.
Really?
Oh, yeah. I use the internet to show all my research in order that other people can question it and we can together get back to a greater truth. And
so you're quite happy to accept if you made a mistake?
Absolutely.
Correct it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I want to know if I've made a mistake. Who wouldn't?
We all do. Yeah.
And the power of the internet is crowdsourcing. So that's the current buzzword for it, but I've been doing it for 7 years now, and it's really effective.
Okay. We talked a bit about DNA. Now, I'm quite excited by what's happening in DNA in the UK this coming year. I know the DNA with the One Name Studies is mostly the Y DNA, isn't it? Which isn't quite so relevant to ancestry launching because they're only launching autosomal testing. However, I think maybe it might bring DNA to people's minds more in the UK. Okay. Well, you're based in the US.
I'm the US.
We're more than
willing to do it.
You're used to it. Yeah.
You still, I'm very interested, very curious to see how ancestry gets on. Because one of the things I've learned being an emigrant is that, and talking with house people around the world, the people who emigrated liked to hold on to what they left behind. So they kept copies of old photographs of people back home that the people back home had thrown away. They kept copies of letters and so on. Yeah. And people back home have moved on. They don't care about the people overseas so much. I mean, broad generalizations. And so is DNA as relevant, as rich for people back in the UK as it is for people in the US who want to find their roots?
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Yeah. Well, we're being asked to wrap up now. So thank you very much for hope you enjoy the rest of the conference and you survive this evening. And thank you so much for sitting here and talking to me this afternoon. Okay, thank you.
Pleasure.
Goodbye.
Thank you.